we've warned him. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Heritage Foundation and our Lewis Lehrman Auditorium. We, of course, welcome those who are joining us on C-SPAN in the future on Book TV. We would ask everyone here in-house if you'll be so kind to check that cell phones have been turned off as we prepare to begin. And, of course, our program will be posted on the Heritage homepage following today's presentation for your future reference as well. And our internet viewers are always welcome to send questions or comments simply emailing speaker@heritage.org. Hosting our discussion today on behalf of Heritage is Ziem Nguyen Salmon. Ziem is our Senior Policy Analyst for Defense Budgeting. She is in our Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign and National Security Policy. She is familiar with both U.S. defense platforms, government contracting practices, and brings her expertise to matters of defense hardware investment. Before joining Heritage, she worked at the Washington, D.C. headquarters of Avascent Group. She later became their manager of Avascent Analytics, a global defense spending data subscription business. From 2007 to 2009, Ms. Salmon served in the Allison Center here at Heritage, both as in Heritage on national security issues. She earned her bachelor's degree in political science from the University of California, Irvine, and a master's in international relations from the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins. Please join me in welcoming Ziem. Ziem?
Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for joining the Heritage Foundation and Concerned Veterans for America today for what we hope is going to be a great conversation with Mark Greenblatt about his most recent book, Valor, Unsung Heroes from Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Home Front. If you all haven't had a chance to read the book, I would highly recommend it. It's a good short read and really highlights individual stories of truly inspiring stories from our soldiers and very telling of the quality of our troops. Interviewing Mr. Greenblatt today is Captain Pete Hegseth, who is the CEO of Concerned Veterans for America. Prior to joining Concerned Veterans for America, he was the executive director for Vets for Freedom, where he successfully grew the organization to over 95,000 members. Captain Hegseth has been deployed 3 times. His last tour was in Afghanistan, where he served as the senior counterinsurgency instructor at the Counterinsurgency Training Center in Kabul. He holds 2 Bronze Stars and a Combat Infantryman's Badge for his time served in Iraq and Afghanistan. A regular contributor to Fox News Channel and a senior fellow at the Center of the American Experiment and term member for the Council on Foreign Relations. Captain Hegseth has graduated from Princeton University and holds a master's from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. Please join me in welcoming Captain Pete Hegseth.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. And first I want to thank Heritage for first of all, for partnering with us on this. This is truly a Heritage effort, and for what Heritage does to highlight efforts of veterans, but also folks like Mark, who have done incredible work to try to highlight the stories of this generation. And I think this institution, more than most in this town, has fought to ensure that these stories continue to be told and that we highlight folks doing great work like what Mark is doing. So I'm honored to be here. I appreciate this. I think the viewers will enjoy it. And I can tell you, having had the opportunity to engage with Valor, you're going to want to pick it up if you haven't already. And I'm not even getting paid for this promotion.
Perhaps I should.
Maybe. We'll see when we're done. But it is a phenomenal read. I know members of our staff have engaged with it as well. And it provides an accessible, and I don't want to, we're going to get into this in discussion, but an accessible account of exceptional stories of what men did on the battlefield. And it's the type of read, as someone who's deployed, who's engaged with these types of, well, not on the level of many of these stories, but situations. It is accessible to a reader who hasn't been in the military, but it has the nuance, the subtlety, and the depth that someone who has and has deployed multiple times engages with the material. And I think that's what makes it such a powerful piece of really literature and something that has had a lot of success. So let me introduce Mark briefly, and it won't do it justice, but I think you'll get access to him through our Q&A. Mark is an attorney based in the Washington, D.C. area who specializes in criminal and ethics investigations. He's involved in several community service activities, including service as the vice president of an education fund, the Lee Greenblatt Education Fund, a foundation created in honor of his mother to honor excellence in education. He received his undergraduate degree from Duke University and his law degree from Columbia University. He was also a senior managers in government fellow at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. He's a black belt in Taekwondo, so he can whoop some ass when he needs to, and was the drummer in the Fiasco, which he claims to be as popular as the Beatles, but I'll leave that up to you. He lives with his wife and 2 sons in Bethesda, Maryland. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mark Greenblatt.
Thank you very much.
So Mark, you've said this before, you wrote this as someone who hasn't served, isn't a veteran, but wanted to honor, what made you undertake this endeavor, and how long did it take, and what's the process been like?
So in 2007 and 2008, I went to awards banquets where they honored military veterans, and folks serving in the military. And they would tell their stories, and they would bring them up on stage in front of this huge audience of people. And there was not a dry eye in the house when they would tell these stories. These were unbelievable stories. And I would go year after year, and I kept saying, how come no one knows this guy? How come no one knows this woman? They're going to go back, and if they're lucky enough, they'll be bagging groceries if they're lucky enough to find a job. Whereas in years past, in generations past, they'd be, they would have ticker tape parades in their honor. They would be hometown heroes. And we just didn't have that. And so year after year, I said, how come no one knows these folks? And then finally I said, well, why don't I write about them? And that was literally the start of it. And then I just started securing stories, going after people. I do investigations. As you mentioned, I do investigations for a living, and so this was something where, during my day job, I look at misconduct, and this was a nice juxtaposition where I was looking for positive conduct. I was looking for inspirational stories, what went right. And that was what drove me, and it took a long time. It took 5 years.
5 years. How did you find them? I mean, literally, would you read a news report and say, "Hey, I want to get in touch with this guy"? Was it word of mouth? How did you find such exceptional stories?
It was a variety of different ways. Veterans organizations were helpful, and Disabled American Veterans and Veterans First helped me find stories. But other than that, it was also just hunting stories down, calling contacts and saying, hey, do you know anyone that might be in this world? Do you know anyone that might be in that world? And just moving forward and just getting closer and closer. That's one good thing about living in Washington is, you can get 6 degrees separation. You can pretty much get to anybody, and especially in the military. And that was something I just hunted them down, looking for stories. And eventually I found a good roster of stories, and when I had an appreciable number, I thought this is good. We're ready.
Sure, awesome. And we're going to get into a couple of those stories eventually because they're worth sort of talking through here to get a sense of what you're engaging with in the material. But you mentioned ticker tape parades in the past. And in the book, you talk about Sergeant York from World War I or Audie Murphy from World War II, names that we know or understand from history that were sort of exemplary of those conflicts. Except, and you didn't name these names, but I will, except when folks think Iraq and Afghanistan today, what are the names that you engage with? You engage with Jessica Lynch or Lindy England or Bo Bergdahl. Those are the names that people know from this conflict. Why no Audie Murphys? I mean, to get to the question of I understand why you wrote it, why no Audie Murphys? Why no Sergeant Yorks? Why such little attention on the individual heroics?
I think a lot of it arises from the political turmoil surrounding the wars at the time. And I think there was an ethic, a culture of not romanticizing what men and women were doing over there. That was seen as cheerleading in the media. And I think that was frowned upon. And so I think that really was what eroded those types of stories getting out in sort of a big fashion. And that, I think, had a detrimental impact because there was no counterweight to the negative stories that would come out. And that's really what was driving me, was that imbalance, was that there was a lack of balance between some of the negative stories, say the Abu Ghraib incident, and the positive stories that were going on. That was so out of balance that was what I was trying to fix, that cure that void on the other side of the scale.
Sure. No,